Welcome everyone, and a good Erev Shabbos. And Baruch Shechianu v'kimanu v'gyanu lazman hazeh to start darshaning the wonderful learning of Megillas Esther as we prepare for the upcoming happy time of Purim, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. We welcome you and we thank TorahAnytime.com for this incredible global platform for teaching Torah, and to Chazak for spreading the word around the world. And before I begin, I don't want to forget, next week the shir is going to be moved a day earlier so that it's not run when everybody is hearing the Megillah laning or eating afterwards, breaking their fast and Sudas Purim. So the shir will be Wednesday night, that's Erev Tanis Esther, Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, just for next week. Sponsoring the shir tonight is my good Talmud, Beirich Goldwasser, and his family, for his wife Zayda Binyamin ben Michal, and for his Zayda Eliezer Lieper ben Reb Dov. Their neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden. They should be Melitza Yosher for their family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. It was also sponsored by Dr. Silverstein and his family, Le'imli Nishmas, Yisrael Mordechai ben Dov Zev, and his mother is Esther, who left this world. Yisrael Mordechai left the world very young. Dr. Ira Silverstein, his neshama should have a great aliyah. He should be a Melitz Yosher as he basks in Gan Eden for his family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. And finally, this year is sponsored by Gershon Baruch Schwartz, L'Refuah Shalema, for Rabbi Yishai ben Chana, and Yaakov Meir ben Shifra Miriam. They should have a speedy, quick, and complete Refuah Shalema b'Seich Shach Eli Yisrael. Next week's share will also be up in Megillas Esther Part 2. I do not have a sponsor yet. If you would like to sponsor, I need it early in the week, especially this week. The share is going to be even earlier. 718-916-3100, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi at AOL.com. Any given week, I don't know who or if there'll be a sponsor. It's, of course, totally in the Yad Hashem and all of you, my wonderful listeners. So before we hear the Megillah, we make 3 brachas. The Chazan makes it, and he fulfills our requirement. So we say, the first bracha is, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvayso v'tzivanu al mikra Megillah. So the question that's asked is, since most of us hear the Megillah, so why isn't the bracha asher kidshanu b'mitzvayso v'tzivanu lishmaya mikra Megillah? And that's not a novel bracha, because that's the bracha that we make on Rosh Hashanah, lishmaya kol shofar. So since we're all sitting in the crowd listening, it would seem to be more appropriate to make the bracha lishmaya mikra Megillah. Yet why do we say al mikra Megillah? So Rashi, in his Sefer Apardis, asks this question. And Rashi gives a very interesting answer. Rashi says, because by shofar, you need to hear the shofar. In other words, if a deaf person blows the shofar but doesn't hear it, he's not yotze the mitzvah. You'll say, well, but he blew it. No, you have to hear it. That's an interesting halacha. Right? But the shofar, the one who blows it, if he can't hear it, he's not yotze. So everybody must hear the Megillah. Therefore, the bracha is l'shmaya kol shofar. You must hear the shofar. And therefore the bracha is l'shmaya kol shofar. However, that's not true, says Rashi in the Sefer HaPardes, when it comes to laning the Megillah. The one who lanes the Megillah, even though he can't hear it, he's yaitze it because he laned it. So therefore, since it's not imperative that it be heard, you could lane it and not hear it. So therefore, to make a distinction, the bracha is al mikra Megillah. That's Rashi's answer. Very interesting answer. Comes along the Avudraham, and the Avudraham has another angle, another interesting angle. The Avudraham says that if we would make the bracha lishmoya mikra Megillah, we would think it means that you have to, if we would make the bracha lishmoya mikra Megillah, we would think that you have to understand what it means. From the lashon of haskei sushma, that you should understand what you're saying. And the halacha is, since it's in lashon kodesh, we're yaitze if we hear it, even if we don't understand it. So in order not to maybe imply that you must understand it, and somebody who doesn't understand it is not yaitze, so therefore we say al mikra Megillah and not lishmaya. Perhaps there could be another answer that I was thinking. You know, there's a famous word from the Ragatcha V'Gain. The Ragatcha V'Gain says that we know when it comes to the 10 sons of Haman, right? So the Baal Korah stops, and we all say the 10 sons of Haman in one breath. And I always felt, by the way, that that's the reason why so many people have a kosher Megillah. Of course, there's the reason that if you miss a word, you could say the word if you have a kosher Megillah. Of course, when you say it, you have to make sure that you say it and catch up to the Baal Korah, because the Kriyas Megillah has to be ala seder, in the correct order. So you can't insert a word out of order. But this way, you could insert a word, somebody sneezed and you missed the word, you could say it and catch up to the Baal Korah. But the Ragatcha V'Gain says that really all of us have to say the Megillah, but since there's a din of Shemea Ka'ina, that listening to it is as if we said it, so therefore the Ragatcha says that we normally we don't have to say it. But he says you can't be yotzei the idea of in one breath with Shemea Ka'ina. That doesn't work. One breath you have to do yourself in one breath, right? So therefore, since you can't be yaitze with shemea ka'ina, the din of neshima achas, therefore you have to say it yourself. And of course, saying it yourself only helps if you have a kosher Megillah. So that would be a reason for everybody to have a kosher Megillah. So, but since there is a part of the Megillah that we have to say and we can't listen to because of this vart of Ragatcha V'Gain, perhaps that's also why the bracha is al mikra Megillah. It's also worthwhile to mention in context that the Ramah says that if a woman is going to read the Megillah, or it's only a group of women that are listening to the Megillah, so then the correct bracha is lishmaya mikra Megillah. The third bracha that we make is she'achiyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. That we lived, and we're standing, and we merited to reach this momentous time of this wonderful, glorious mitzvah. So, the first question, which is obvious, is that Shechiyanu v'higiyanu seems to be the same idea. Shechiyanu, that we lived, and v'higiyanu, that we reached. That seems to be, indicating the same idea. So the Ma'aseh Nisim says as follows. The Ma'aseh Nisim says, Shechiyanu means that Hashem allows us to live amongst the Goyim who in every generation tried to destroy us. Right? So it says, we say this in Haggadah, Shelo yachad bilvado amar aleinu l'chalo yiseinu. It wasn't just Paro, it wasn't just Bilam, right? So therefore, Shechiyanu says the Ma'aseh Nisim is that in the midst of the hostility of the Goyim, Hashem allows us to live. This takes on very, very contemporary meaning, living in our tumultuous time where there's so much anti-Semitism on the rise, especially in Europe, and with the fright of the Black Lives Matter riots, which could easily take its anger out on the defenseless Jew. So we say Shechianu, that we live even with the Goyim, and today so many unprincipled Goyim surrounding us in all areas. V'kiyamanu, so v'kiyamanu means that you stand us upon our feet. Now, how are we standing upon our feet? That's through Torah and mitzvahs. That keeps us standing on our feet. I heard once that it says in Asher Yotzar, it says, we say nekavim chalulim, that we have openings, orifices, we have all the hollow organs, right? If one of them should chas v'shalom hemorrhage, or yisasem echad mehem, or if one of them should chas v'shalom have a blockage, it's impossible for us to exist v'lamod lefanecha afilu sha'achas, even for 1 hour. So I was once bringing water for Moshe, my Rebbe, Moshe Feinstein, and I heard him say afilu sha'achas. Some people don't say that. And I asked him right afterwards that, is it true that if we're constipated, we can't exist even 1 hour? And Ramosha looked at me with a twinkle, and he says, what's kiyum? What's existence? It's just not to live. It means to be able to learn with a geschmack, be'iyun. And even if you just have constipation for 1 hour, it distracts you. So when we say v'kiyamanu, it means that we're thanking Hashem that He stands us on our feet with the beautiful mitzvahs that fill our minds, and the Torah, which gives us satisfaction, as we will talk about later on tonight, Be'ezus Hashem. And finally, V'higiyanu, that's Kipshutai, that we look around, and especially this year. This is about a year of Corona, right? Corona reared its ugly head right after Purim last year. That was the time of horror here in the tri-state area. Different places in the world had their horrors at different times. California, London, right? different places had different periods of horrors. But if we look around and we see how many good people are not with us and have succumbed to this terrible disease, that we're able to say, V'higiyanu, that we've lived to reach this milestone, that's a really, especially now, a really, really, really moving bracha. And although I don't want to get sidelined by this, but I do want to mention that we should be proactive, especially those that are older or at risk, to get the vaccines, and not to be misled by even well-meaning people that talk about not taking vaccinations. Unfortunately, these people, many of them mean well, but they're dangerous. If there would be social media at the time of the polio vaccine, God forbid there'd be many more people that would have succumbed to polio. We don't know what the long-term effects are. You know that there's somebody that died, and there's somebody had a terrible reaction, and somebody got corona afterwards. You know, there's a reason why someone like me has a piece of paper called the smicha. It's not a very humble thing to say, but there's a reason why I have a piece of paper signed by Rav Moshe Feinstein. And that is because you have to decide who to listen to. Do you listen to a well-meaning housewife that listened to some podcasts and read some reports? Do you listen to someone who, the way they get noticed, and they don't even have to know that this is what's driving them, is they run a campaign of anti-vaxxing? Or do you listen to Gedalim? Do you listen to the Visions of Rebbe? Right? Do you listen to the great doctors that dedicate their lives, Yomam V'Layla? All these doctors are not part of a big conspiracy. They're not part of cashing in to the pharmaceutical industry. Bottom line is it's a hishtadlis of an ishmartem ma'odes nafshei seichem to vaccinate, and it's a smart thing to protect yourself and make the effort as soon as possible. As a preface to the Megillah for Tafshin Pei Aleph, you know, I'm teaching the Megillah now, B'li Ayin Hara, for over 40 years. And you might say, Rabbi Weiss, you know, we've talked about every detail of the Megillah. You know, it's a good review, but, you know, you're going to learn something new? Come on. So I want to tell you that I'm going to share with you now something that after learning the Megillah for probably 50 years, I never knew. And it's a tremendous lesson. It's an eye-opener, and it's not an insignificant small pshat or detail. It gets to the very root of the miracle. And this is just, you know, one example. There really is no chiddush to what I'm saying, because this is Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nem. And the very fact that it's Baruch HaKodesh means that it's endless. We know that the Megillah tells us the pedigree of Mordechai. That he's ben Yor, ben Shimi, ben Kish, Ish Yemini. And it's a famous question that Shimi was not the direct son of Kish. Kish was Shaul HaMelech's father. There were 7 generations in between Kish and Shimi. So why does it say Ben Yor, Ben Shimi, Ben Kish? So there is a famous pshat that many of you probably heard, that the Targum Sheni says that really Shimi should have been executed. And then there would have been no Mordechai and no Esther, who both descended from Shimi. Because what happened is Shimi cursed David HaMelech, and he was married by Malchus. He said, Tzei ish adamim v'ish habliyael. He called him the man of blood, a man of worthlessness. And indeed, Avishai ben Tzruya told David, let me cut off his head. David HaMelech saw Baruch HaKodesh. David HaMelech saw Baruch HaKodesh that from him would descend Mordechai, who would save Klal Yisrael, and he told Avishai to spare Shimi. And indeed, David would instruct his son Shlomo. He would give him certain instructions, and he would tell him that when Shimi becomes old and is not able to have children anymore, then he should get his punishment. But David HaMelech has a direct, King David HaMelech has a direct shaykhus to the fact that the miracle of Purim took place. There's an interesting Me'amloyes. Me'amloyes says that when Haman threw 3 dice, he threw and it was 133. It came out 133. Now 133 is Agag. So he was very excited that it came to his ancestor Agag. That was what was on top. And the Mamloi says, but v'nahafachu, if those that know dice know that if you turn around a 1, you get a 6. If you turn it around on the dice, on the other side there's a 6. And if you turn around the 3, you get a 4. So then it comes out to 644, which is David, right? It's $2, 2 4s, and over 6, right? So David is on the top. But that's this David HaMelech who foresaw the fact that Mordechai would come from Shimi, and therefore he delayed his execution. But this is a pretty well-known Targum Sheni. But what is not known, and I venture, I would be surprised if even a small fraction of my very choshev audience is aware of this Medrash Shmuel. The Medrash Shmuel asks, Mipnei ma zochu Mordechai v'Esther lehe'oseis neis al yodam. Why did Mordechai and Esther merit that the neis should happen through them? And it's fascinating, the answer. It says in the Medrash Shmuel that the wife of Shimi, this is why it says Mordechai ben Shimi, the wife of Shimi, who was the ancestress of both Mordechai and Esther, the mother of their grandparents, saved 2 tzaddikim, Achimotz and Yonasan. The wicked avodim of Avshalom were chasing the 2 tzaddikim. There were 2 great tzaddikim, Achimotz and Yonasan, to kill them. So they were running, and the wife of Shimi beckoned them to come and dash into her house. And they ducked for cover in her home, and there was a well. She told them to climb down the well, and they said, but, if they check, we're finished. They'll kill us. They'll throw spears down, and we'll be helpless. So she said, trust me. And then she uncovered herself and stayed by the top of the well. The servants of Avshalom burst in and said, did you see 2 people run here? And she looked embarrassed, and she covered herself, and she said, no, nobody was in here. So the servants looked at each other and said, there's no way the 2 great tzaddikim would come in with a woman here so uncovered, and they left. And the Rabbeinu Shalom said, you are mevaza yourself to save 2 tzaddikim. There will be born from you 2 tzaddikim, Mordechai and Esther, because remember, Esther was Mordechai's uncle's son, Mordechai uncle's daughter. Because you saved 2 tzaddikim, 2 tzaddikim will come from you that will save Klal Yisrael. It's an amazing thing. Amazing thing that here is a Beferish Medrash Shmuel, that the whole miracle came about through the heroic act of a woman, through the act of saving 2 tzaddikim. And because of that, Hashem saved 2 tzaddikim. You have to realize that not only did she have the 2 tzaddikim from her, but Hashem saved these 2 tzaddikim, because Esther, of course, was many times in danger. Remember, Haman assassinated Hasach, Daniel. He could have assassinated her. Achashverosh could have not stretched out the scepter when she came in without permission. The guards would have immediately cut off her head. Mordechai was supposed to be hung by Haman, who was the most powerful person in the world. So here we have a great turning point in the whole miracle of Megillah that many people, most people, were not even aware of. This is an example of how important it is to study Megillas Esther. We know Leiv Malachim V'Sarim B'Yad Hashem. The hearts of kings and princes are in the hands of Hashem. Oh, don't we see this today in politics? How Hashem is pulling the strings every which way. But here I'm going to give you an example from the Megillah. Bayomim ha'em, it was in those days, Keshevesh HaMelech Achashverosh al Kisei Malchusai, when Achashverosh was sitting on his royal throne, Asher b'Shushan Abira, which was in Shushan, the capital, B'Shna Shalosh L'Molchai, in the 3rd year of his reign, Asasa Mishnah. Now all of this is connected. Usually you make a big Mishnah at the beginning of your reign to celebrate the inauguration, not in the 3rd year. The capital of the monarchy was usually in Bavel. What's it doing all of a sudden in Shushan? And what's the mention that he was sitting on his throne? I mean, of course he was sitting on his throne. He made it when he was sitting on his throne. When he was sitting on the couch. Well, so in Esther Rabbah, it tells us that Achashverosh had a great desire to sit on the throne of Shlomo HaMelech. As we will discuss in a moment, the throne of the Shlomo HaMelech was the most wondrous throne in the history of mankind. And his predecessors tried to sit on the throne. Nebuchadnezzar attempted, and the lion that we will see that was by the first step, a lion of gold, kicked him, and he limped the rest of his life. Later on, Sheshach, the king of Mitzrayim, also tried to mount it, and the lion kicked him, and that's why he was known as Paro Nechei. Nobody was able to sit upon it, and so was the same. Achashverosh was very leery, and he saw that it wouldn't be successful. So he hired people from Alexandria of Egypt to make a copy of this throne. Now you have to understand, this is, not like, calling Hatzorfim and making a fancy candelabra, He had to bring in artisans from Alexandria and Egypt, and it took 3 years to make this throne. The Targum Sheni gives us elaborate detail on the workmanship of this throne. The Targum Sheni tells us that this throne had incorporated in it 72 golden lions and 72 golden eagles. That's just part of its craftsmanship. Now it had 6 steps. Each step had on the right side and the left side a different animal or bird, which helped raise Shlomo HaMelech's feet to go to the next level. So on the first step, on the right was a golden axe, on the left was a golden lion. The second step, on the right was a golden wolf, and the left was a golden sheep. On the third step, the right was a golden leopard, and the left was a golden camel. The fourth step had a golden eagle to the right and a golden goose to the left. The fifth step, there was a golden cat and a golden rooster. The sixth step had a golden hawk and a golden dove. Then there was a huge golden eagle that after Shlomo HaMelech was raised to the 6th level, that eagle then carried him to the seat of the throne. On either side were 2 very, very impressive fish that acted as brackets on either side of the throne, and there was a huge golden menorah with a huge golden reservoir. There were 70 attached seats for the members of the Sanhedrin. It was a massive throne, and I'm not going to give you. There were much more details as detailed. It was a massive throne. So it took them 3 years to make a copy, and the Gra, Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Yivrachu Zchus Yagan Aleinu, the Gra said afterwards he wanted to move it to Bavel, but it was too heavy to move. The craftsman said, listen, if you're going to try to move this, you're going to break it. It's a very intricate piece of golden work, and it's too heavy to move. So if he couldn't move the throne to Bavel, so he changed the capital to Shushan, where they built the throne. Now, all of this, Leiv Malachim B'Sar V'Yad Hashem, Hashem put it in his heart that he had to have a copy of the throne. All of this was because Hashem made the refuah before the Makkah, because Mordechai was already exiled to Shushan. So therefore, the Rabbeinu Shalom orchestrated all of this. Achashverosh's great lust for honor and power to have the throne and make a copy and work on it 3 years and delay his inauguration and everything, in order that Achashverosh should live in Shushan where Mordechai is, so Mordechai will be there to orchestrate the miracle of Purim. Mordechai and Esther will be there to orchestrate the miracle of Purim. This is an example of the refuah before the Makkah. That's similar to what the Ibn Ezra and the Holy Alshich says, that when Memuchan gave the Eitzah that Vashti should be killed, right, because she refused to come at the obscene bidding of Achashverosh, so both the Alshich HaKadosh and the Ibn Ezra say that too was the refuah before the Makkah, to get rid of Vashti to make way for Esther before the Gezerah of Haman came. And it happened through Memuchan, who was Haman, because that's another way of Hashem, that Mimaka Atzma Misakan Aratiyah. From the wound itself, Hashem fashions the cure. Just like the fever brings chills, which brings fever, with the heat of the fever, which is the Makkah, helps to cure, because we know heat cures. Or from the cut itself is fashioned the scab and the healing of the wound. So here too, Mimaka Atzma, from Haman himself is Misakan Aratiyah. He was the one that brought the refuah before the Makkah. Actually, the Yerushalmi argues and says Memuchan was Daniel, because the Yerushalmi would rather say that Megalgal and Schus, to get rid of this wicked Vashti, Vishilumas Rishon Tireh, should be brought about through a tzaddik. So the Yerushalmi learns that Memuchan was Daniel. We also find that both the Gra, the Yosef Lekach, and the Megillas Tzarim, Tzadikim Ukedoshim Levracha Zechusam Yagan Aleinu, they say that when Haman told Achashverosh, Im ala melech toiv, Yetzei dvar malchus milafanav, may a decree come from before him. So Haman insisted milafanav, that he wanted, and he did, add to the bylaws of the land that Achashverosh should be able to make decrees on his own, and he shouldn't need the advice and the agreement of his shoftim, of his judges. And again, the Gra Yosef Lekach and Megillas Tzarim says this was again refuah before the Makkah, so that when Achashverosh got so angry at Haman later, and in his anger decided to kill his friend and assassinate him, and defeat all his plans against the Jews, he wouldn't need to get the agreement of the cabinet, who were all buddies of Haman and children of Haman and enemies of the Jews, and it's likely they would have tried to stall it, right? So, but since he created the refuah before the Makkah, it's milafanav, he could decide it himself. So that too brought about, and again, Mimaka Atzma Misakan Aratiyah, brought about the rescuing of Klal Yisrael. By Yom HaShvi, on the 7th day, Kitoiv Leiv HaMelech Bayoyin, when the king's heart was good with wine. So there's a famous kasha in the Medrash. It says, K'toiv leiv hamelech b'yoyin, asks the Medrash, is there toiv by goyim? Is there toiv by the wicked? V'chi l'rasha yesh toiva? Achashverosh was a Rasha. Right? We know that from the first pasuk in the Megillah. Hu Achashverosh, and the Medrash says, the Gemara says, Hu Achashverosh, hu berish asay mitchilasay v'atzayfay. He is wicked from beginning of it and end. He was wicked to the core, wicked through and through. He never changed. He never changed his colors. Don't be misled. Don't think that he came out of his stupor and he was hoodwinked and Esther showed him the light. He never allowed the Beis HaMikdash to be rebuilt. It would only be after his passing, Esther's son, Darius II, Dayavish the Beis. But Achashverosh was wicked from beginning to end. So how could there be good by a wicked person? It's a beferish pasuk in Koheles. V'toiv lo yiyeh l'rasha. There will never be good for the wicked person. That's what it says. V'toiv lo yiyeh l'rasha. There won't be good for the wicked person. So how could it be good? So the Medrash right away answers, it doesn't say toiv leiv hamelech b'yoyin. It's kitoiv. It's like toiv. It masquerades as good, but it's not real good. She'ein toivasan toiva amitis. The good of the wicked is not a true good. And that's, of course, the great mirage of life. The great smoke screen. It says, Chayshech ze Yavan. Darkness, that's Yavan. Now, that's an interesting thing. Yavan, Greece, is what's all that's beautiful. The glory of the Olympics, the shine of the Olympics. That's Yavan. Yavan is the letters of Noi, but that's Chayshech. It looks good, but it's not a Taiva Amitis. The Maral adds over here that it's not a Taiva of Ruchnius. It's not a spiritual good. Now that's a very important idea. And I'd like to maybe embellish upon that Maral. It's not the good of the soul. It's the good of the body. And the good of the body is fleeting. The good of the body is like a plate of cholent, which, lasts for a short amount of time. It ends up in the bathroom. And if you eat a certain amount, you can't eat anymore, right? It has a saturation point. The true good is a good of the soul, which is a toiva of nitzchias. It's not like a chaloim yov. It's not like a fleeting dream. It's forever. That's the meaning of what we say. Ki lekach toiv nasati lochem toirasi al tazayvu. Goodly merchandise I gave you. Do not forsake my Torah. Ein toiv ela Torah. Ein toiv ela Torah. The good. True good is only Torah. What does David HaMelech say? Achashalti me'es Hashem oisa avakesh. Here he is, the king. He has all the pleasures of a monarchy. He says, one thing I want, Shifti beveis Hashem, to sit in the house of Hashem. You have to know that Torah is the mazana of the neshama. It's the food of the soul. And it's the nachatz hanitzchi. It's the pleasure of eternity. Let's think about that. It's something that lasts forever. It's the reason why Hashem created the world. If not for the covenant of the Torah, I wouldn't have made heavens and earth. Right? Hashem made all the pleasures of the world. From a beautiful sunrise, a beautiful Riviera, succulent food. And he said, Lo yomer sefer ha-Torah hazeh mipicha v'gisa b'yom v'layla pikudei Hashem yesharim misamchei leiv ein simcha kesimchas ha-Torah. I mean, this is straight straight from the manufacturer. It says, "V'kol chafotzecha," any of your pursuits lo yishvu ba, will not equal to the Torah. I learned recently, in the first day of Parshas Vayeshev in Chayk, and by the way, it's good to give another plug over here, that I am now teaching Chakli Yisrael, doing it slowly, but there are many, many shiurim already on TorahAnytime.com, all the way from Bereshis through Vayeshev. Every day of the week in Chayk, we learn 8 different disciplines. Chumash, Rashi, and Targum is one, then Navi, then Mishlei, then we learn a perik of Mishnayos, then a piece of Gemara, then a piece of Zoyar, then a piece of Musar, and then a piece of Halacha. It's amazing. So in Vayeshev, in the Zoyar portion of Vayeshev, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says in the Zoyar that what's the power of the Yetzer Hara? He says because there's a halacha that we learned recently in Mishpatim that one litigant is not allowed to present his case to the judge without the other litigant being present and presenting it at the same time. And it says in the Gemara that if one does that, he presents his case, he gets in early, he's considered a Rasha Aram, a cunning, wicked person. Why? Because the one who gets his case in first, the judge thinks automatically, it's a human tendency, that that's the correct opinion. So the Zayar says that's why the Yetzer Hara is so successful. Because he gets all of his opinions in to a person 13 years before the Yetzer Tov. Because the Yetzer Hara comes at birth, L'Pesach Chatas Reivetz, sin is already crouching at the door of the womb, while the Yetzer Hara only comes at Bar Mitzvah, Vayigamal, Yud Gimel Mo. At 13 the heart is first circumcised. And therefore, says the Zayar, that's why a lot of things are considered a burden to the tzaddik, because he already is convinced about the ways of the Yetzer Hara. So the Yetzer Hara has convinced us in the 13 years of our youth that this world is an amusement park. It's here to have fun. It's here to have excitement. It's here to have highs. It's here to get a rise. And then when the Yetzer Tov says, sit and learn and work on a sugya and do this for people, he sounds like a burden. That's what the Zayar says. It's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. People have the wrong idea what Tov is. They have an idea that it's the Kitov of the Rishon, right? It says, V'yom hashvi Kitov, but it's not really Tov. It's only Tov. It's only Kitov. That's why that today, and I think this is especially a test of Corona, when people were stuck indoors and they were going out of their minds, and people succumbed, even those that didn't do so before, they succumbed to open up the computer to such venues as Netflix and Amazon Prime and who knows how many other things there are. And the Mesilas Yesharim says, in the 15th parak, he says that the Yetzer Hara is a Tavahu la'inayim. It's very pleasurable to the eyes. Now remember what it says about that. It says about that by the Eitz Hadas, right? That Kisavahu la'inayim. Movies are a big Taiva la'inayim. It's relaxing. It transports you to a different world. It gets you a lot of friends that otherwise you're lonely. Right? It's Savahu la'inayim. But you know what the Eitz Hadas brought? It brought death to mankind. And people that succumb to sitting and watching, it's death of their time. They say chait. The worst thing about a sin, chait means to miss. The slingshot experts of David HaMelech, lo yichata, they never miss. The worst thing is it's a wasted life. There's a person, he sits inside and he wastes his night. Night is only supposed to be for Liman HaTorah. He wastes his night with this show, binging on that show, and it's a feel-good feeling. Aye, but it's a death of time, and it's person gets to the next world and he sees nitzchias that he missed out on. Right? It's not toiv, it's kittoiv. And this is what it says in Devarim, Perek Lamed. And it's not for naught that it's Perek Lamed, the Perek of learning. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, Re'ei nasati lefanecha hayoim, es hachayim ves hatoiv. I gave you chayim, I gave you toiv. Ves hamoves ves hara. And it's a choice. You have a choice. Should I go to a shiur or should I sit and relax? Lay on my bed in front of a screen with some popcorn, with a soda, and enjoy, and feel good, and feel relaxed, and a feel-good ending. Aye, but it's such a waste of a life. The chayim is eitz chayim ilamachazikim ba. Gedoyle Torah she noisenes chayim loiseh. Not only in Olam Haba, but Olam Hazeh or Olam Haba. The famous Maisa with Rav Shach. Maisa goes with Rav Shach that he met the great Reb Reichman, and he gave him kavod. Rebbe was Mechaber Ashirim. Reichman was a tremendous philanthropist. And Rav Shach said, "I'm mekana your Olam Haba." All the schusim that you get for what you marzik Torah. But you should be mekana my Olam Hazeh. He told this to one of the richest Jews in the world. You should be mekana my Olam Hazeh. Rav Shach, that lived in small Spartan quarters, he says, because you're busy with all of your businesses, I'm sitting in the Torah Hashem, right? Interesting that Rav Aaron Kotler writes in the Mishnah's Rav Aaron, there's a novel pshat in Smach Zvulun b'tzeisecha v'yisachar ba'alecha. Literally, it's translated, Smach Zvulun will rejoice when he goes out to do his business, v'yisachar in the tents of Torah. But Rav Aaron says, Smach Zvulun b'tzeisecha. Zvulun will achieve the true simcha of Pikudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamchei Leiv only b'tzeisecha when they leave this world to Olam Haba. Because then they'll get the Torah that they richly earn from supporting Yisachar. But Yisachar ba'alecha, but Yisachar gets the pleasure of Pikudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamchei Leiv, the Torah Hashem Tamima Meshivas Nafesh in this world. Now I'd like to add two more things, although this took a tremendous amount of time, but it's a very important lesson. And the first one is that the true pleasure of Torah in this world is the pleasure of satisfaction that all the kesef and the zav doesn't bring. Because a person says, yeah, but if I have that, but mishi yesh leimana reitzim asayim ve'ino the meis v'chatzi tavosa biyadai. Esav said, yesh li Rav, I have a lot, but I surely want more. I want to make a killing. But Torah is yizbul v'yisangu mitavecha, this satisfaction and delight from your good. Satisfaction and delight. And Yaakov said, yesh li kol, I have everything. This is what I say all the time. The most famous bracha song of the Seder, and one of the most famous songs of the world, which almost the entire world sings with the same nigun. Shabbos songs, there's so many different nigunim, depending your mudgets, your visions, your babav, you know, what's your persuasion? From Hungary, from Poland, but Dayenu, everybody sings Dayenu. Dayenu means enough. Ayid is Sabenu mituvecha. Ein toivel atoy. And that's richness. The ability to be satisfied. And also the fact that when we learn Torah, when we learn Torah, we unite with Hashem. Right? It says, Kutsha Barichu Yisrael v'Kutsha Barichu v'Arais Echad. The Torah and Hashem is one. When a person connects and sits and learns Torah, they're connecting with Hashem. And David HaMelech says, you connect with Hashem. Ani kirvas elikim li taiv. To connect with Hashem is good. That's why David HaMelech said, Acha shalti meis Hashem oisavake shiftu meis Hashem. Right? Kol yimei chayei la'zois b'nayim Hashem. To connect with Hashem. On this very same verse, B'yoyim hashvi k'toiv leiv HaMelech b'yoyin, the Gemara Megillah Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis says, what? It was only on the seventh day that he was merry with wine? Achashverosh didn't indulge the rest of the time. V'chi ad yom shvi lo yaya lo yayin. Until the seventh day he didn't have wine? So it's interesting. Rabbi Yosef Kaira, he says that on the seventh day he was celebrating that the 180 days and the seventh day went without a hitch. It's a big thing to pull off. First 180 days for all the provinces, and then 7 days for the entire Shushan, and everything was going without a hitch. He was celebrating. That's why the Rekeach adds, finally he was able to let down his guard, because every other day he had to be sharp for the next day. He was putting on a party the next day. Finally, on the seventh day, after 180, 70 days, this is the last day, he said, now I can get good and shikah. However, the Gemara Megillah says something else. The Gemara Megillah says, B'yoyim hashvi k'toiv leiv HaMelech b'yoyim. We know that HaMelech is a code word. Throughout the Megillah, it doesn't say Hashem's name. One of the reasons it doesn't say Hashem's name is because it was introduced to the chronicle of Paras and Modai, the Megillah, and they were afraid that if they would have put him in Hashem's name, then Paras and Modai would substitute it for their god, for their Zeus. And it says, V'shem elihim acherim lo yisaskir, you shouldn't cause other gods' names to be mentioned. So they didn't put in the name of Hashem in the Megillah. But there's a code, whenever it says HaMelech, it means Hashem. And that's why there are HaMelech Megillahs, which every column, except of course the first one, starts with HaMelech. So here it says, K'toiv leiv mayoyim hashvi k'toiv leiv HaMelech b'yoyin, and it means that it was Shabbos. And what saved us, and therefore Vashti was killed, and it paved the way for Esther, who would be the instrument to save Klal Yisrael. It was B'yoyim hashvi, K'toiv leiv HaMelech b'yoyin, when Hashem's heart is merry with the wine of Klal Yisrael, of Kiddush, of saying Eidos and Brias Ha'olam. And when Yidden drink wine, Hashem saw the difference. When Yidden drink wine, they say Torah, they sing Zmiris, they sing Shalom Aleichem, they bench. While Goyim, they start talking about women and immorality. And Shabbos was Tova, its insult, that Vashti made Jewish women work unclothed on the Shabbos. And this we should know is the way. It says, more than we are Shomer Shabbos, the Shabbos protects us. Or in the words of the Taz, in Siman Reish Samach Zayin, She'im Yishmeru HaShabbos, HaShabbos Yishmeru Oisanu. If we guard the Shabbos, so then the Shabbos will protect us. And therefore, the Shabbos was on Shabbos that all of this happened. It's interesting that there is a fantastic Sharei Tshuva. The Sharei Tshuva writes that when we say in Hashkivenu, or Frey writes this from the Talmidei Arizal, and if you want to look this up in the Sharei Tshuva, it's in Siman Reish Samach Zayin Sif Beis, in the name of the Talmidei Arizal, that when you say Ufroi Soleinu in Hashkivenu, you should stand up, because it's at that time that we're Mekabel the Neshama Yisera. There's a Haggadah, Persumei Nisa, from the Chachmei HaSfard. It's a beautiful Haggadah. Doesn't need my askama. It says that's when it says V'hi she'amda la'avoseinu v'lanu. So it leads itself to many, many, many interpretations. It's a cryptic comment. V'hi she'amda. And it has protected us. What's the it? So we know that our children say the V'hi, the Vav is the 6 Mishnayos, and the Yud, Hey is Chamisha Chumshei Torah, and the Yud is the 10 Commandments, and Aleph is Hashem. But the Haggadah Pesumei Nisa says the V'hi stands for Shabbos, because it says Shabbos Hi B'chol Moish V'Yiseicha. V'hi she'amda la'viseinu v'lanu shelo yachad b'lvad amar aleinu l'chal v'yiseinu. It's Shabbos that protects us throughout the ages. And that's why we find a smichas in Mariv. We say, Baruch atah Hashem ha'purei sukkah shalom aleinu, that Hashem spreads the booth of protection upon us. V'al kol Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. And right after that we say, V'sham v'nei Yisrael Shabbos, because it's cause and effect. Hashem protects us, Hashem Shabbos guards us, and Hashem through Shabbos guards us, because V'shamu b'nei Yisrael Shabbos. That's what we say. Shabbos imalizik. If we guard the Shabbos by not crying out, that in itself will cause that refuah kroiv alavai. Wow, it's getting late. I'm going to try to get in one more idea. Before I do, again, next week, the shir will be a day earlier because Thursday night we'll be at Megillah raining and eating the meal after the fast and busy with Purim. So the shir will be Wednesday night instead at 9 o'clock. And again, I know you'll say, he says it, but he comes up with sponsors. I come up with sponsors because I say it. I don't know, from week to week, I don't know who's going to sponsor. And I hope that several people will respond if you enjoy this shir, which is heard in 180 countries and is heard on TorahAnytime.com, Kol Haloshen, to my digital subscribers. It's heard eventually on Torah Communications Networks, on Facebook. If you want to sponsor, 718-916-3100. Please, I need to know by Monday morning the latest. 718-916-3100, and the email is rmmwsi@aol.com, Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss, Staten Island, at aol.com. And if you would like to subscribe to get the share earlier in the week, it's $26 a month, and again, you could text me or email me. Vatimoin hamalka Vashti Lavai. And Vashti refused to come. Now, this cost her life. And Ibn Ezra says a very interesting reason. It shows how trapped Vashti was. Vashti says, my husband is shikker. He's showing off for other people. They gave him a deer. And he said, I'll prove you my wife is prettier than your wife. But when he sobers up, he's going to be very angry. You showed yourself, you're supposed to be special for me. You showed yourself to all those people. How can I appreciate you as queen anymore? So she says, there's no way I could do this. He'll discard me as a used wrapper if I do it. That's an Ibn Ezra. It's an interesting idea. However, it's known that the Menois Halevi brings it down from a Beferish Medrash that it's not that Vashti was bashful or protecting her honor. She was a prutza, and she, together with Achashverosh, wanted to get the Jews to sin. It's not that she didn't want to come, but Hashem made it that she couldn't come. He hit her with leprosy, or Gabriel came and put a tail on her. So there was no way she was coming out covered with hideous leprosy or looking like an animal with a tail. Now we know also that there's a strong element of Midah K'neged Midah, because it was Shabbos and she made Jewish women work unclothed on Shabbos, and therefore she's asked now to come out unclothed on Shabbos. Also we know that she wore the 8 begodim of the Kohen Gadol that sits and the Choshen and the Me'il, and therefore, because she usurped the holy begotten, now she's being stripped of all her clothing, right? So there was a big midah keneged midah. But what was the reason for the leprosy, for the tail? So the simple reason for the leprosy is because she was a big balosh and hara. When Achashverosh was thinking about allowing the building of the Beis Hamikdash, because he heard things that we also offer up things for the Goyim, and Goyim could offer there, and he knew, he knew that Alexander the Great allowed the Beis Hamikdash. So she told him, "Are you crazy? My grandfather Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple." You would think she spoke bad about the temple, about Hashem's house. So Mitzvah is a Moitzirah. That's why she got tzaras. That's the simple reason. However, the Tnuvas Chaim writes, it's a Sephardi compendium, Tnufa Chaim, writes that since she caused the Bnei Yisrael to be Mechal Shabbos, if a person takes the oineg of Shabbos and perverts it, oineg changes to nega, to a nega, to a plague. You have to know this, how careful we have to be with Shabbos at this time of plague. And that's why she was stricken with negaim, with leprosy. Now, as to the tail, there's also an interesting thing. Why a tail? I believe because a tail made her look like an animal. She treated Yiddish Meidlich like animals, making them walk around without clothing, like a cat, like a squirrel. Therefore, Hashem made her look like an animal, attached a tail to her, and made her look like an animal. And by the way, as it's brought down in the Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer, when she was killed, she was slaughtered naked like an animal. So she got her desserts. And I just want to end off with the fact that Vashti, the name Vashti, there's one chazal that she was from the one of the four most beautiful women. She was the daughter of Belshazzar, some say Eva Merodach, and the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar. She had yichus there, she had beauty, but really she was as significant as a gnat. Vashti is the same letters as Yitush. She was just a gnat. Sometimes you see a woman, oh, she has such a position, she's so beautiful. She could really be no more important than a gnat. And Vashti is also the letters of Shosui, drunk, because her end came through the fact that her husband became just a worthless drunk. I hope this serves to whet your appetite to break out the Megillah and to learn it. Of course, you see, we only just touched a little taste. And Amir Hashem will continue next week, Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. We thank TorahAnytime.com, Chazak, our sponsors. We thank you all for joining us and wish you a good Shabbos and a Freilichen Oder.